Hi, this is Murdock's Jukebox.
Pop, pop, pop music.
Of Doom.
The title of this video, I think, pretty much tells what I'm planning to do now. However, originally this was not the plan for my next video. Originally, I was thinking of reviving or continuing my little tape memories series. If you want to know what that is all about, check out the playlists. The tape memories are a little series I installed for my channel where I go through my old tapes, usually mixtapes, and talk about more personal stages in life or just some topics that come to mind in connection with the music on those mixtapes. And the next one that I fished out of my tape box was a self-made compilation of deeper cuts, tracks from the first 5 Black Sabbath albums. I called this mix A Whole Lot of Black Sabbath, and that actually gave me the idea to maybe do something a little bit different this time and come up with another ranking, but for the first time on the channel, a song ranking. My top 20 Black Sabbath songs, and to be more specific, I will focus on the Ozzy Osbourne years of the band. I know Black Sabbath quite well. Interestingly, they are one of those classic rock or early metal bands that I still listen to, and actually that I enjoyed more and more over the years, while with Led Zeppelin, as a comparison, I don't listen to too much Led Zeppelin these days, maybe because I've heard them so much during a certain time in my teenage years. Black Sabbath still are a band that I really sometimes grab from my CD shelf and feel like listening to a little bit. Why just Ozzy Osbourne? It's not that I'm an absolute purist. I also enjoy Black Sabbath tracks from the Dio years, and I've even got some albums from the often frowned upon Tony Martin era. So one day maybe I will make a discography ranking of all the Black Sabbath albums, but that's something for the future. However, I know the Ozzy Osbourne albums best, and I just feel at home with them. So that's why for a song ranking, I decided to concentrate only on the original lineup. However, I really went through all the Ozzy Osbourne albums one more time, not only the first classic ones, the first 5 or 6 ones. Usually fans refer to the first 6 Black Sabbath albums as the classic canon and then often ignore the other albums with Ozzy Osbourne. Also, of course, the band had a reunion and recorded a final album. I pretty much guess this really was their final album, an album called 13, also with Ozzy. A couple of years ago, I also listened to that one and even considered their final EP, which was fittingly called The End, and which was shortly released after 13. But honestly, while not bad recordings, none of the tracks from 13 or The End finally made my personal top 20. But I really considered all the Ozzy Osbourne material with Black Sabbath. And if you already now get the feeling there's too much talking here and not enough music, I will put a Spotify link down in the video description where you can get access to my top 20 Black Sabbath tracks playlist, the best tracks from the Ozzy Osbourne years. Obviously, from my personal opinion. And of course, always feel free to provide your own top 10 or top 20 Black Sabbath list in the comments below. You will find that a number of really iconic and beloved Sabbath classics did not make my top 20 list. So always keep in mind this is just my personal taste, songs that I still enjoy over the years. Some of those classic metal defining tracks, I will freely admit I have listened to some of them simply too much, too often. Of course, that doesn't make them bad tracks, but nothing that I feel listening to on a regular basis. So that's why maybe you will find some of the typical candidates not included in my top 20. So, but now let's find out what is in my Black Sabbath jukebox. At number 20, already an entry that is a bit unusual for the typical Black Sabbath sound, or at least not something that you would expect at first when coming to a Black Sabbath album, because on this track the band tried to transfer their doom and gloom heavy guitar riffs onto a synthesizer. It's a little spooky, cheeky synthesizer motif that actually makes up most of the song. It's maybe a little bit repetitive, but I've always enjoyed the atmosphere that this song creates, and I'm talking about Who Are You, an album track from 1973's Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. There's a bit of a science fiction feel to this song. Ozzy sings about control, a kind of big brother figure or entity. So there clearly is some social comments running through this song. This little synthesizer line, this melody that runs through the whole track, actually makes it for me. Number 20, Who Are You? Number 19 for me is Into the Void, a super heavy stoner rock track from Master of Reality, an album that was released in 1971, if I'm not mistaken. This is Black Sabbath at their most doomy and stoner rock. The bass is super heavy and the guitars are down-tuned. It's, dry as the desert sand. And again, this is a bit of a science fiction-like song. The lyrics deal with the end of the world, humanity practically destroying itself, and maybe the hope to find a new world, a better future in space, in outer space, all set to really grinding riffage from Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler on the bass. I think the bass guitar in this song, in this recording, is as important as Iommi's famous early metal guitar. Number 19, Into the Void. My number 18 is another track that you probably won't find on too many top 10 favorite Black Sabbath tunes lists. It's an album track taken from the last album recorded with Ozzy in the late 70s. It's musically one of the most unusual tracks you will find on any Black Sabbath album. There is a bit of a hazy psychedelic atmosphere in the verses, whereas a lot of the song has a slightly jazz informed style or vibe. There even is a very jazzy break in the song with a quirky noodling guitar solo from Tony Iommi. He plays in a way you haven't heard him on any of the other Black Sabbath albums. The drums also show that Bill Ward, who is a bit of an underrated drummer in my opinion, actually came from also a jazz background. And the song I'm talking about, fans will already know now, of course, is Air Dance, or Brits will have it as Air Dance, from the album Never Say Die, released in 1978. It's, as I said, it's the last album with Ozzy Osbourne before decades of different singers for Black Sabbath. Air Dance really is an interesting and haunting track, and I really recommend listening to this maybe without your usual preconceptions of what a Black Sabbath track should sound like. It starts with a very upbeat, cheerful little guitar line, or actually a hook line that is played by the guitar and a harmony line by the bass guitar, which already creates an unusual sound for a Black Sabbath track. And then, as mentioned, the song goes through several very unexpected changes. It's more a kind of a psychedelic jazz rock track in my book. And every time I come across this song, I'm really impressed by how Sabbath dared to step out of their comfort zone, or actually put their fans out of their comfort zone, because this definitely is not what you would expect from classic Black Sabbath. Number 18, Air Dance. The next entry on my list is a bit of a hidden gem or unofficial classic from the Ozzy Osbourne years. A track from the album Volume 4, which was released in 1972. A true epic. It practically consists of 3 parts, all of them brilliant in their own right. Stellar guitar work throughout the whole song from Tony Iommi on this track. It's a very melancholic, a bit, downbeat song, actually. Wheels of Confusion, a song about, as I interpret it, about growing up, leaving the world of childhood, the world of fairy tales, as it says in the lyrics, and being confronted with the often bleak or frustrating reality of adolescence or grown-up life. Actually, that's the way I interpret the lyrics. It's not a very happy song, but also, again, a good example of the lyrics of Black Sabbath. I think this is an aspect that is often not given much attention. Black Sabbath are usually seen as this, heavy rock band, this first metal band with a bit of an occult image. Ozzy, as a frontman, has his special charisma. Working class lads who just, put the noise up to 11. But that would, mean to actually dump down Black Sabbath a little bit. The music is very smart and thoughtful oftentimes, and also the lyrics are not simply Satan worshipping mumbo jumbo. Actually, all of the Black Sabbath lyrics, at least from the Ozzy Osbourne years, are very carefully crafted. Geezer Butler, the bass player, usually provided the lyrics, and very often they look at society, they have social commentary or anti-war messages, spiritual messages. It's really worthwhile taking a look at Black Sabbath lyrics. They are actually very often, they are deeper and more profound than the lyrics of other classic rock bands, especially if you compare them to what Deep Purple or Led Zeppelin sang about in the 1970s. Black Sabbath really have a lot to offer, both musically and in the lyric department, at least for a rock and roll band. Wheels of Confusion is no exception. As mentioned, I think this has an epic feel to it. Again, the recording is quite hazy. I would also call this stoner rock or early stoner metal. If you've never heard the deeper cuts from the classic Black Sabbath albums, this one is a song that you should not leave out. And in my list, it's number 17. The next one is quite a different thing, a concise, short, snappy hard rocker. The opening track from the album Technical Ecstasy from 1976, another album that usually receives mixed reviews from fans and critics. This album opener really is a fun, up-tempo song that just gallops along. I think it's a lot of fun. I always enjoy listening to it. Not the deepest Black Sabbath track. It was also released as a single A-side. I don't think it did too much in the charts, but nevertheless, I can clearly hear why this was chosen as a single. I think it's a bit of an overlooked track in the Black Sabbath catalog with Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah, quite a catchy hard rock track. Number 16, Backstreet Kids from Technical Ecstasy. Continuing with my number 15, a track on which you won't hear Ozzy singing because it's an instrumental. Well, technically speaking, not really an instrumental because there are vocals but no real lyrics. So in my mind, it's sort of an instrumental. A really unusual, megalomaniac, over-the-top track called Super Czar, featuring a full-blown choir that was brought to the studio just to sing some cinematic R's, to flourish a doomy marching instrumental track. It's understandable why the band used this track for a very long time as the entry tape before they went on stage for their live shows. Some fans say that this is one of the examples where you could hear that Sabbath were somehow losing it or, losing direction. I really enjoy this track, as a kind of very evocative, over-the-top, overblown little curiosity in their catalog. Black Sabbath's Super Czar from 1975's Sabotage. It's only fitting that this track with choir and a bit of orchestra. I think a harp can also be heard. Finds itself on an album together with a track called Megalomania, because that is what this song oozes for me. And speaking of Megalomania, that's also my next entry, number 14 on my top 20 list. This is a slow burner in the beginning. It starts sluggishly, very mysterious, but also with a note of doom or a feeling of threat, to then explode into this epic, slightly proggy proto metal track. The band is at their doomy best, and I think this also is one of the most outstanding vocal performances from Ozzy Osbourne during his Black Sabbath years. He pulls out all the stops, and you can hear a certain aggressive glee in some of his vocal delivery. There even is a passage that almost sounds like they slipped in an F word, but actually, if you read the lyrics, it's not. But I think it was done on purpose.
When I feel something's giving me the chance to return, it's giving me the chance of saving my soul. Big chance of damning and I'm fading away. I'm going backwards but I'm in control. Feel it slipping away, slipping into tomorrow.
My number 13 is something a bit more lighthearted, at least musically. It's a track that even features hand claps and thus has more a bit of a pop vibe, actually. The song, however, is a very sarcastic comment, or has been read as a sarcastic comment on the music business and the record industry by Black Sabbath, criticizing the record industry to be just looking for the fashion of the day. Bands quickly are celebrated and then quickly also get out of fashion as the industry and the tastes of the public move on, or actually the industry dictates the taste for the public. And all this is delivered or packaged in a very upbeat, cheerfully sounding track, which probably was meant to add to the irony of the whole procedure here. And the song I'm talking about is called Looking for Today of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Probably not a highlight or a favorite of many fans, but I really like the dynamics and the pace of this track. It's also quite catchy for a Black Sabbath song, but still keeps up the rock sound of Black Sabbath.
Lemon cream, so soon to slip. Easy comfort, how everything goes. 10 foot tall, but waterfall. Hard to walk, yet so easy to flow. Yeah.
For my number 12, I've chosen a track of Volume 4, Snowblind. Title says it all. Of course, it's about the merry winter days in good old England, but most of all about the band's love for debauchery in the studio. Sabbath were known for huge amounts of cocaine in order to get going during recording sessions. And Snowblind very openly talks about cocaine and its effects. Not that I'm a huge fan of glorifying drugs, but this song has a great hypnotic quality. Again, it's rather slow-paced, but that adds to the haziness and the wasted atmosphere of this song. Plus a guitar that sometimes almost sounds a little bit out of tune. I think this is a great, sometimes overlooked gem in Sabbath's early discography. And again, it comes with a deceptively simple melody that even though this clearly is a stoner rock, early stoner rock song, but the way this song is arranged and the quite catchy melody makes it very, easily accessible. I'm staying in the realm of illegal substances for a little longer. My number 11, probably one of their most popular tracks, at least among fans. Also talking about the consumption of drugs, in this case, weed, and this is described as Sweet Leaf. It's the opening track of their third album, Master of Reality. It starts with the famous snippet of coughing, followed by one of the classic sluggish, super heavy, down-tuned, and iconic Black Sabbath riffs. Interestingly enough, this track even was released as a single A-side. I don't know where and if it charted, but I mean, that was a pretty bold statement. I guess they ran into troubles with several radio stations. Okay, before I get to my personal top 10 of the Ozzy years, time for some honorable mentions. Some of the huge Sabbath classics from their early years are not featured in my list. Not because I dislike them, but there are simply other tracks I like a little bit more. But I will take the time for some honorable mentions. One of the biggest classics, one of the best examples of the beginnings of heavy metal, for instance, is not in my list. The classic Iron Man. I've heard this song maybe a bit too often, and to be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of this track. A few other tracks that didn't make my list by a small margin are Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, for example, another fan favorite, or the song that started it all, the title track from Sabbath debut, also the name of the band, Black Sabbath. It's an iconic track, more actually a precursor to gothic metal, I'd say. And I clearly see the merits of this song, but I rarely feel like listening to that one in full length, so it didn't make my personal top 20. I'm sure there are a few fans that will put Black Sabbath in their top 10 because of its iconic and legendary status. Maybe rather deep cuts that didn't make my list, but songs that I would like to point out for being worthwhile. She's Gone, an acoustic ballad with a very intricate string arrangement. Again, something that you wouldn't expect on a Black Sabbath album. It's from their stylistically very diverse 1976 release, Technical Ecstasy. I think this is a very beautiful, haunting track with a melancholic beauty to it. Another song that sees Black Sabbath in a kind of psychedelic space rock mode, also something they never really repeated on any of their albums, is the song Planet Caravan, a song that lets you float in a kind of lava lamp environment in your mind. A very beautiful track, actually. Also, one last honorable mention, A song I also like a lot, but one that didn't quite make the list is The Wizard, also a song from their debut album that somehow fuses Sabbath's first steps into heavy rock or heavy metal with a more blues rock, with more blues rock roots. Very cool track, The Wizard. But now let's get on with Murdock's Jukebox, my top 10. At number 10, another really heavy, brutal riff rocker, the opening track to 1975's Sabotage, Hole in the Sky. This one is a delightfully straightforward riff banger, with Ozzy sounding quite angry and determined. Tony Iommi adds an adventurous, almost a bit dissonant solo, really worth seeking out. If you've heard Iron Man or War Pigs or Paranoid often enough, this one should satisfy your hunger for more heavy Tony Iommi riffs.
I'm living in a room without any view. I'm living free because the rent's never due. The synonym of all the things that I've said are just the riddles that are built in my head. Hole in the sky.
The next one at number 9 is a more radio-friendly song, stepping out of Black Sabbath's doom metal sound that they had cultivated and developed further and further over the years. It's a track off their album Never Say Die. Arguably, it has more of a more conventional hard rock sound and is not as heavy or as typical Black Sabbath sounding as the albums that came before. This one is almost a sing-along track with a gang chorus, a more accessible commercial melody. It was also chosen as a single release. I find this one very catchy. I also like the lyrics. They are very hopeful, motivating us to go on even though life is a hard road. Maybe in terms of the music, the songwriting, not the most complex or ingenious track, but a song I come back to again and again, Hard Road of Never Say Die.
Days are falling, time is calling to the earth, that life is gone. Love like gone.
Number 8, going back to the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath album, a song with very poignant lyrics, in my opinion, looking at everyday work and how it stresses people out. The rat race, presented in around 4 minutes. Like many Black Sabbath songs, this track consists of several parts, 2 very distinctive parts in this case. The first part features a great guitar lick played with 2 guitars, overdubbed guitars, harmony guitars, which really makes it stand out from other Black Sabbath tracks. The second half then turns into a very groove-driven jam. Yeah, a fantastic 70s rock song with great observations in the lyrics. For Sabbath themselves, they also probably were singing about the disillusionment, the drag that the music business had become for them, but everybody can read something else into those lyrics. Killing yourself to live.
Well, people look at people stare. Well, I don't think that I even care. You walk your life away, and what do they give? You're only killing yourself to live.
At number 7, I put the B-side to the Iron Man single. And if you're wondering now, or you're running to find your old vinyl singles, don't worry, it's also an album track on Paranoid, the probably Black Sabbath's most famous record. And the song is Electric Funeral. It's a song about nuclear warfare or the nuclear apocalypse. Comes with an acidic riff by Tony Iommi and a lot of unexpected breaks and changes. One can also hear a little bit of Sabbath's jazz roots. I mean, they started out as a blues rock and jazz rock band, and Bill Ward also was a jazz drummer originally. You can hear it in some of his grooves. There's a certain swing to it. Arguably, very often in Sabbath's arrangements, at least on these 70s tracks, a lot of their breaks or a lot of their segues from one part into another part on one track are not the most elegant ones. Sabbath were not the masters of doing intricate progressive rock textures and changes that were really woven into the song in a masterful way. But especially on Electric Funeral, I think those harsh breaks actually work very well. This is a stupendous track from Paranoid, Electric Funeral.
Robot minds of robot slaves, lead them to atomic rays. Plastic flowers, melting sun, fading moon falls apart.
By sheer coincidence, also my next pick deals with the danger of the atomic age and atomic warfare, but maybe also more in general, the dangers of humankind destroying their own environment. And this was depicted quite drastically or with very dark lyrics on the track Children of the Grave. This is a track of Master of Reality, also one of the more up-tempo Black Sabbath tracks. I tend to prefer Black Sabbath if they go a little bit up-tempo. This is just another riff beast, one of the first doom metal tracks, stoner metal songs. What also makes this one interesting is some extra percussion, some extra drumming from Bill Ward, and what I believe to be a harmonium in the middle of the song, or a pump organ, an instrument that was used in small churches or evangelical gatherings. Also maybe an instrument that I could imagine, at least in the English-speaking world, is associated with burial ceremonies. It has a somber, grave quality to it, this instrument, and you can hear this used very effectively on Children of the Grave. The song was also a single A-side, at least in Portugal, Mexico, and France. At my number 5, Black Sabbath almost go a little bit punk rock. It's one of their fastest tracks, at least from the classic Ozzy years, and quite removed from the doom and gloom sound of their first albums. I'm talking about the title track of their 1978 release, Never Say Die. A very no-nonsense, straightforward, fast-paced hard rock track, again with rather uplifting optimistic lyrics. Yeah, one of my favorites, Never Say Die.
People going nowhere, taking for a ride, looking for the answers that they know inside.
Reached number 21 as a single in the UK. For those who already have maybe made some very upset comments while watching this video now about the lack of, really great famous Black Sabbath tracks in my list, at least my number 4 is an absolute classic and a song that can never be broken for me. It's just perfect from A to Z. Also, I think one of the best anti-war lyrics ever, including protest singers like Bob Dylan. Maybe the lyricism here is a bit more simple or more, on your nose than in some of the more poetic singer-songwriter lyrics, but I think War Pigs, honestly, I think War Pigs is one of the greatest statements against war and a very scathing observation of how war works and the industry or the benefit some people gain from warfare. And this was a really bold track musically and lyrically back in 1971. It's the opening track from Paranoid, of course, and Black Sabbath fans know that War Pigs actually was originally the intended title for that album, then refused by the record company as being maybe a bit too harsh for the public. So it was then changed to Paranoid, but War Pigs probably is the crowning achievement on this album. There are stunning live versions from the 70s, and also the studio version just is 70s rock perfection.
Day of judgment, God is calling. Underneath the war pigs crawling, begging mercies for the sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings. Oh Lord, yeah.
Right, get ready for my number 3. It is the lamest entry for any Black Sabbath song list. No Iron Man, no Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, but my number 3 is Paranoid. Everybody's probably a little bit tired of this song, though it is a stone cold classic of hard rock, proto-heavy metal. It's also the only commercial hit Black Sabbath have ever had. Went to number 4 in the UK, I think, and 61 in the US Billboard charts. And of course, this is a little bit overplayed. It's like Smoke on the Water or Stairway to Heaven. But still, it's my number 3 because it is absolutely infectious still after all these years. It's the first Black Sabbath song I ever heard. I'm pretty sure about that because this was a 45 single my parents had. It's a really fast-paced track and speeds by, so it never really overstays its welcome. And, well, for me, it just deserves to be in my top 20 list. Number 3, Paranoid, of course, title track from the same album and their most successful single.
Finished with my woman 'cause she couldn't help me with my mind. People think I'm insane because I am frowning over time.
At number 2, and all of these songs are really, they're just perfect in my mind, at least the top 5 or actually the top 10. These are perfect tracks, and number 2 is one I've always loved. It has a great groove. It's also more fast-paced, and the hero for me on this track actually is Bill Ward and his drumming. There is a break in this song that plays with samba percussion, or the closest that Black Sabbath ever came to, Latin American percussion, actually, combined with a super heavy biting riff. The track is Supernaut from Volume 4. This is a relentless rocker that takes no prisoners from beginning to end. Great track from the Volume 4 album. And now the great reveal, what's number 1 in my Black Sabbath with Ozzy Osbourne jukebox. With this track you get both probably the heaviest song Black Sabbath ever recorded together with Ozzy, and at the same time also one of their grooviest, most laid back jams. It's again a song that consists of 2 parts that are very different from each other. The first half very often is regarded as the first thrash metal song in history, and it comes with a really brutal riff, especially for 1975 when it was released. Some argue that this is also a bit of a weakness of this track because the first half is quite repetitive. It's based on the same riff over and over again, but I don't mind. I think this is just super impressive and great playing from the entire band throughout the whole track. The second part then takes yet another unexpected turn and becomes this very laid-back acoustic jam. Tony Iommi throws in some really tasteful playing on the acoustic guitar. It's a little bit jazzy. Ozzy's vocal performance is stunning, almost a bit soulful in the end, really, really emotional and powerful. And this has always been my favorite Black Sabbath track ever since I've heard it for the first time. The first time I heard this one actually was in a cover version by Sepultura, which is also really cool, but the original, which is a whole lot longer, is where it's really from Sabotage again, Symptom of the Universe. My top 20 picks for Black Sabbath with Ozzy. If you enjoyed this or are now really pissed off by my uneducated opinion on the classic Black Sabbath years, consider subscribing to my channel, either for enjoyment or to keep an eye on, the crappy videos I'm doing here on YouTube. Thanks for sticking around. More mischief to come on Murdock's Music Minute. Cheers.